Welcome to the Kingdom Educators podcast, where we empower Christian teachers to grab a hold of heaven's hope-filled perspective so you can activate transformational impact in your classroom and community. I'm your host, Jesica Glover, and I warmly welcome you to wake up to your strategic placement as a kingdom educator, anointed by the Creator and equipped by all of heaven to release the radical goodness of God that will transform lives and reshape education. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kingdom Educators podcast, where we equip and encourage teachers to walk fully in their calling as ambassadors of the King of Kings in their schools. And as you probably know, we've been in a season focusing on prayer, learning how to pray with authority, partner with God's purposes, and cover our classrooms, schools, and communities in intercession. Today, we're going to do something a little more personal about prayer and how it transforms our hearts as educators. And I am so excited. I'm always so excited, right? To be joined by my friend, Bekah Hutchinson. And Bekah and I first met July 2024 at the Christian Educators Leadership Summit. And God immediately drew us together. You know, when God highlights someone, that was Bekah. Bekah was highlighted to me. And we discovered that we both have this heart passion to live completely free of Satan's lies and to walk fully in our identity in Christ so that we can help students, colleagues, and other educators do the same. And isn't that our calling, right? As lights in our schools, it's Jesus wants us to be free so that we can release freedom to others. And that's part of who Bekah is. So leading up to becoming What You Believe intensive with Identity Exchange, God nudged us both to encourage and pray for each other. And that encouragement continued through the course that we both took this last winter. And now we're both in the next step called Catalyst. One of the things that I love most about Bekah is how real she is. Her heart is to help others relate to her journey so that they too can experience freedom through hearing and obeying God's voice. And her life has been incredibly transformed. And today she's here to share insights and practical nuggets for Christian teachers who want to lead in truth and freedom. So Bekah, warmest welcomes. I'm so glad you're here. Clap, 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 clap. It's so good to have you, friend.
Yes, I'm glad to be here.
So Bekah, can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a teacher and how God first began speaking to you about your identity?
Yeah, so this is my 22nd year of teaching, so it's been a while. I taught in China for 4 years, and then since then I've taught 1st through 6th grade.
Okay.
And this journey really started, I had a class one year that was probably what I would call my hardest class I've ever had. And I almost quit. And I think
Wow.
a teacher needs to go through this experience in some way. I didn't quit, but I knew that year something was different. I knew I couldn't do it on my own anymore. Whatever I was doing, whatever gifting I was walking in that I had learned in grad school and had nurtured, I knew that wasn't going to be enough to carry me through.
Mm-hmm.
It was that year I actually didn't have the vocabulary or understand the journey God was taking me on. This was probably 10 years ago.
Okay.
I remember God spoke to me so clearly, teaching is not your identity. Your identity is not what you do.
Yeah.
Right. It's who you are. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. It wasn't actually until I met the Winships that I had more vocabulary for that. But it definitely changed the trajectory of my teaching. I started asking kids questions. I started being really curious just about, well, if this isn't my identity, what is? And so I kind of started that journey.
I love that. I did not know that you taught in China for 4 years. That's cool.
Yeah, that's where my daughter's born.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I always wanted to teach in China, and the Lord was like, no, you're going to learn to love the heartland. So here I am. So good. So what was it about becoming What You Believe intensive that we both were in that really impacted you personally? You've got this journey going with Jesus, kind of delving into my work doesn't define me, but yet a teacher is part of who I am. How did becoming What You Believe intensive, it quickly carried that trajectory of learning your identity, but will you share a little?
Yes. Yeah, I would say it started at Summit. The windships were at Summit. And as Jamie and Donna were sharing about identity, Jamie said something that really impacted me. It said, negative emotions are God's invitation to freedom. I had never heard it placed that way before, like that. It's like growth mindset, but with a truth of Jesus, right?
Okay.
And I recognized, oh, I have all these lies or untruths or negative feelings that I'm having. And you're telling me that's my invitation to freedom. Like I need to lean into those things. And I think I had been running from them, feeling like, oh, these aren't godly, or these aren't bringing Jesus, or I think I've been running from those things. And they basically called me out. I feel like, I'm sure that's not their intention, but I felt very called out. Like, wait a minute, like you have to tell the truth.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can look really good, but you have to tell the truth of where you're at. And I think at that time, I was pretty broken. My dad had passed and I had taken care of him on hospice, and I was in a really hard place. And I just began to tell God, hey, this is hard and I don't know what to do. But I know that you're pulling me into this place of identity. And I think true identity is not what you want to do when you grow up, but who do you want to be? And who are you? Who has God created you to be? And I think that as I began the journey, I began to learn about how the only way out of fear and the only way out of these hard places is by telling them the truth and then allowing God to speak to that. And so I began a journey of like, wow, I've a lot of lies and I didn't even know it. Like I explained to my kids, you go through an experience, let's say someone cuts you in the lunch line. It seems like a small thing, but from that experience, you have a big emotion. And then you pick up a belief like I'm not seen, or I don't matter, or who I am isn't important. And you pick up that belief and you start to live out of that belief. And what I learned through identity, where I had done that I had picked up beliefs through experiences in my life, and that I had started to live out those beliefs in my life until I spoke like what I was believing about myself and about the world. God couldn't bring freedom into that and speak his truth. So,
yeah,
I mean, that was pretty powerful in the classroom because I think I was at a point where I was either going to quit or keep teaching. And I knew that God had placed me in teaching, but I didn't know why. And I didn't, it was a hard space and I didn't know what he was doing. And I think beginning to truth tell, started to dig deep into, like, one of the things I have learned is that my current circumstances often are not the source of my pain. And so when I go through something during the school day, I would begin to ask myself, like, okay, this really bothered me. What is this touching in me, God? And I would just say it. Like, I just stop, go to the bathroom, sit down. Okay, God, that really hurt my feelings. I'm feeling these big feelings. What do you say to that? And the beauty of Jesus is he's always there. But when you ask, he answers. He always shows up.
Yeah.
And so I just started walking through my day, asking him, like, okay, if you've given me this identity, which my identity that he's given me is delightful breath of life, born to create, organizer of chaos, and speaker of freedom and truth. And so I was like, if this is my identity and I'm feeling these big feelings, what is this touching? What lie am I believing that's touching these big feelings? And can you speak truth to that? And so that's just kind of become my mantra throughout the day. And sometimes I'm better than other times.
Yeah. Bekah, one of the things that I've appreciated about you on this journey is I love the beauty of how you applied it to your classroom right away. It's like you're willing to work through it and you're like, God's showing me this while I'm doing this. And your heart is just like, okay, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to lay all my cards on the table, beginning with truth telling, but I'm going to teach my kids how to truth tell too. At the same time, just allowing the Holy Spirit to have his way in your class so that you were learning and they were learning. And it was just like all these crazy cool things were happening because you said yes.
Yes. Well, I think there's a real power in saying yes. I think that there's like invites us into his goodness and his journey, right?
Yeah.
With my kids, I recognized last year, and what I continue to recognize, I even have a story from yesterday, but what I continue to recognize every day is if God's inviting me into that, he's inviting the people in my sphere into that also.
Good. That's
because
so good.
that's part of who I am. And so that's part of the influence he's given me. And so my kids are part of that sphere. And so when like that Jamie and Donna spoke to a lot is that they could just use the word love. And it changed everything for me because I pray over my kids every morning. I pray over my classroom, but being able to speak to my kids about the truths of God and just call it love, what it opened huge doors in my classroom. So like in my life, I would say Jesus when I'm working with kids. Even yesterday, we did an exercise where I took the kids, kids are so good at imagining. And I had them like imagine their safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sitting in our safe space. Everybody's in our safe space. And I say, okay, who does love say you are? Like just
Yeah.
invite love into this space. Love say you are. And every single student had an answer. And we do talk about like we differentiate, like, okay, if you hear something that is not kind or gentle, that is not love. And you
So
can just
good.
reject that. You don't have to accept it. You can just read it. And so I think like the process of teaching kids to hear the truth is
Mm-hmm.
pretty powerful. There's that verse, you the truth and the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I started doing in my classroom. We just started practicing listening to truth, listening to love.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow. And I love how you gave them parameters for safety too. Like, this is what it should sound like taking every thought captive.
yes, because I think like even as adults, we don't recognize how much dialogue goes on in our head that
Yeah.
isn't Jesus. It's
Yeah.
not healthy, good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's there because we've lived life. And so we take on beliefs about ourselves or we take on dialogues of ourselves, of the world. And so defining that for students is really important. Like defining, okay, if it is not love is patient and kind and gentle, and if it's not one of those things, then you can just let go of it because we know
Yeah.
that's not what love would say to you. And kids do it better than I do. They say, oh, okay. And then
Mm-hmm.
they go with it. They're like, well, that couldn't be true. So I think it's such a beautiful transformation to watch and to kind of walk out. What I've learned is, especially as a teacher from Becoming What You Believe, was that God is enough. So if
Yeah.
God is enough, there's enough time, there's enough patience, there's enough resources, and I am enough because God made me and He is enough. And so teachers, we work from like this deficit of
Yeah.
like, there's not enough time, or there's not enough of this, or this kid is behind. And that's not how God sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think shifting to the understanding that He's enough and that there's enough, it brings a lot of calm into the classroom and into my own heart and mind to know, oh, there is enough.
Yeah.
There's enough time, enough resources, enough patience, enough love. I think that was like the biggest shift for me in my classroom.
I love that because it just destroys the whole victim mindset. It's like, wait, if God is enough, then He's my source for everything. And He makes me more than enough. There's impossibilities, and to challenge those lies, just like with the students, like that's not who love is, though. He's not a man that he should lie. He's going to follow through on who he is.
Yes. In fact, I had a story yesterday. So I walked my students through, we'll listen to love, and then they bring kind of an emotional situation. So yesterday I
Okay.
had a little girl in my class and she was out at recess and they were playing tag, but she wasn't it. And her friends ran away from her.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was having all these big emotions and she was crying and she came in and was telling me about this. And I said to her, okay, what are you believing? Like we've named these emotions. What are you believing about yourself?
Mm.
And she says, well, I'm believing that I'm all alone and that I'm a bad friend. This is a second grader.
Wow.
And I said, oh, well, let's ask love. And I just said it like right there. We just stopped. Let's ask love. Is it true or is it a lie? She said, well, I think it's true. And here was the beauty of it. In my heart, I knew that's a lie, but she felt like it was true. God is bigger, right? God is enough. So I was like, okay, I usually don't have to say that, but we went through and I said, let's ask love. What does love say? So can you just go to love and ask love? So she asks, and right away her eyes pop open. They're like super wide, and she says, it's a lie.
That's
and
so
I said,
good.
oh, okay, well, what are we gonna it was so good. And then I said, well, can you give it to love? Like, let's imagine it in your head. Let's give it to love. So she gives it to love. And I said, what did love do with her? Her eyes pop open again, really wide and bright. And she says, well, he crumbled it up with a piece of paper and threw it outside in the rain outside, and it disintegrated. And I was like, it disintegrated. First of all, very surprised by that vocabulary, but also very excited. And I said, well, remember, when you give a lie to love, love gives you something in return. So let's ask, what does love give you in return? And so she sits there and we sat for probably a minute. Felt like, a minute in the classroom sometimes feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
And she looks up at me, really, really sweet. She says, I'm a gifted listener.
Wow.
And I said, oh, wow. And I said, that is amazing. I said, how does that make you feel? She says, it makes me know that I'm a good friend. And then we just went back to, I said, well, how are you feeling about Tag? And she says, oh, it's okay because I know I'm a good listener. That makes me a good friend. It's just like these little side conversations. I mean, I've done it as a whole class, but that just remind, it's that It's that easy for kids. It's that easy for us, that God is in every moment, and
Yeah.
that we just have to be willing to acknowledge and then sit with and listen to his voice.
When God speaks, it gives so much confidence. Like she knew that being a good listener was a friend because she heard him say that. Like it's like, or the
Right.
connections happened.
That,
And so there's no going
yeah,
back anymore to like my friends ran away from me on the playfield, but it doesn't change who she is anymore. And it's that
right.
solid exchange that, like you're saying, you can also have as a teacher. Hey, acknowledge that hurt. Why did it hurt? Okay, Jesus, what do I need to deal with here? And it's that invitation, like you said, the big emotions are an invitation to healing. It's just so beautiful, the full circle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the past, before identity work,
Mhm.
I would have kind of problem solved with her and told her her identity. I would have said, well, you're a good listener. Of course, you're a good friend. But
Mhm.
when I say it, it's just a message, right? It's still truth. But when and love speaks it to her, it changes because she heard it. Like love spoke it to her. I didn't speak it to her, loved it. And then I can affirm that. Then throughout the day, I can affirm to her, you're such a good listener. I see you listening to that friend. And I can affirm that truth. But it's the power of that listening that really impacts kids and adults, like impacts us in our relationship and understanding. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a wild ride. I'm not going to lie. It's been, and some days kids are really like receptive, and some days we ride the wild waves, right? I mean, it's a classroom. So when you can get kids to like grab onto the fact that they have access to love,
Hmm.
once they recognize that, it can become part of their life all the time,
Hmm.
right? Once they recognize, like, oh, love with me. Then when and I said this to the class, I had her share later, and she was at first a little hesitant, but then she wanted to share. And the beautiful part was the whole class was like, yes, that's who you are, because it's her identity, right?
Yeah.
And then she was able to share in a way that other kids felt safe,
Oh, that's
right?
so
So I think
good.
it's not just the like, we get changed, right?
Yeah.
We get changed by what love says to us or what God says to us. And then when we share those stories,
Yeah.
others get like the opportunity to receive change too. And I
Wow.
think that's why I started doing it in my classroom, because it
Yeah.
was like, well, if this were for me,
Yeah.
why wouldn't I give it to everyone in my sphere? Like, why? Let's try it out. What's the worst case scenario? God is enough,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes as teachers, we get afraid. Like, I know at first I was really nervous.
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, even my mistakes are spaces for God's redemption story.
Oh, that's so good.
That even my
Mm.
mistakes and the places that I feel like I'm failing or not doing it right, open spaces, like they're a part of God's redemption story, and they open those spaces for his redemption. So
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So on a daily basis, how do you kind of think about time in terms of giving this space, both for yourself personally and your students? Like, do you plan out spaces or how do you, I mean, yes, wild ride, real classroom. What does it look like?
So, real world classroom, there's a couple of different ways that we've done this. Last year, I had the kids got really excited about it. We did an identity day on Friday, was our identity day.
Okay.
So, every day we would do like an identity activity, like they would learn what their truth was or what their identity was, and we'd do an
Okay.
activity. So, we would make space for that, 20 minutes maybe. A lot of classrooms do community circle at the beginning of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I usually do community circle at the end of the day, because what we do during that time is bring forth anything that maybe we might have listened to a lie. So
Okay.
kids will share, like, I had this experience, it was hard.
Yeah.
And then we will go through it together as a whole class, and we'll go
Mm-hmm.
step by step. Okay, did everybody have an experience? Yes, because we all are alive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we'll share that like twice a week. We might do that for like 20 minutes at the end of the day.
Okay.
Sometimes if a kid comes in from recess with like a really big emotion, and I
Mm-hmm.
know it's like our read to self time,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just have other kids like go read, and I'll just pull that kid over and say, okay, let's go through this with love. Once kids know how, it becomes part of our basically my classroom management. Like when two kids are frustrated with each other, we talk about how like that frustration is really probably because it's hitting an emotion, like that emotion is attached to something in your own heart.
Yeah.
So let's ask love what it
So
is,
good,
and let's see
Bekah.
if love can speak to that. So I think those are some really practical ways. When I first started, sometimes the lessons would take like 45 minutes because I didn't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But now I can do it in 5 or 10 minutes. So
Okay.
you can kind of crunch it throughout the day. And for myself, I do the same thing. So I go in the morning. Every morning I go in, and as I'm coming in and I feel the rush of the day, I just say those things. There is enough time. There is enough resources. There is enough patience. I am enough because you are enough and you made me. And I literally just speak that over my classroom. And then one of the questions relationships ask all the time is, are you inviting me into this?
That's
And
good.
so I every morning I go into my classroom, I say, God, what are you inviting me into today? And then I'm going to be honest, I just assume he's going to speak.
Yeah. You expect.
It's not like during math, I'm like, okay, God, what do you say? Although sometimes I am. I'm just expecting him to speak. And so just then I just have to listen when he speaks.
Yeah.
And sometimes I miss it completely. And then later I realize I missed it. And the beauty of that is my mistakes are spaces for God's redemption, right? So I can go back to a kid and say, hey, I missed this yesterday. I saw this. I thought about you last night. I'm sorry that I missed this. I saw that you were, having this big emotion, and I feel like I didn't acknowledge that. And would you like to sit with love? So just checking back in with
Yeah.
kids and checking back in with myself.
Yeah.
And then honestly, on the way home in the car, on my drive, I have a 20-minute drive. And every day on the way home, I'm like, wow, that was a big day. That was a big day. And I just say, like, God, what do you want to say to me?
Yeah.
Like, what would you like to speak to that? And then sometimes it's really clear. And sometimes it's a song, comes on the radio or comes on my heart. Or sometimes a friend calls and they speak something. But I feel like just opening up. I think we have this idea, this is what it looks like to have a quiet time or to listen or to hear it. I think that Jesus has had many fun times sitting down and watching a movie with me. I don't think he's restrained by my, how I'm spending time with him. I think he loves every minute I give him.
Yeah.
So I just try to commit it in the morning and recognize that, ask, what are you inviting me into today? And then try to listen to that. And sometimes I get like something will happen and I'll get a big emotion. And if I feel that happening and I know at the moment that I can't deal with it, like I'll say it in my head, but to me, it's like out loud. Okay, God, I hear you. And I'm going to open a space for that later. Right now, I have to do this. So can you help me?
Yeah.
And I just like hold it. I mean, he knows that we have to go get kids from recess. He's not
Yeah.
restrained by time. It's like, so the beauty of that is sometimes later when I go back to whatever the big emotion was, I feel like I can hear him more clearly because there was a little bit of time in between. Sometimes what we think is urgent is just a surrender. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give this to you right now and we'll come back to it, Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like throughout the day.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for kind of painting that picture as we're thinking about being teachers on mission, ones that carry the light of the truth of Christ. It also is, I love your reminder that even in our mistakes, it's this opportunity for God to move and to have his way. And I hear so much grace in the learning process for yourself, but yet you're inviting kids at the same time. Like, it's okay if it's messy. There's always this room for like God to come, and the constant questions that you're asking the Lord and inviting him. Like I would say, how do you want to partner with me, Jesus? Or how can I partner with you today? What does that look like? Even if it's, teacher, grab your own language, but
Right.
It's just the whole idea of doing that. Like, you're with me. I'm expecting you're going to show up. I'm expecting that you're going to speak to me. I'm not worried that I'm not going to hear anything because you're the God who speaks and the God who hears. And just posturing ourselves that way, like knowing.
Yes, I think you're right. It's the posture of we are the conduits of his goodness. Like he has created us and we're the conduits of his spirit to the people around us, right? And so just trusting that that's who he created us to be and walking in that and surrender that and having a posture of, which in all honesty, yesterday I was crying at work. This is great. And it wasn't even over a big thing, but I felt like it was something I didn't feel like I had power over. It was like I had been kind of thrown under the bus by a friend, but not on purpose. But it was also something that I didn't feel like was true.
Okay.
Right. So I think I had big emotions because I felt like, okay, it's not true. I know it's not true. I have to prove it's not true. And then I just took a deep breath and stepped back and said, no, I don't. I don't have to prove this isn't true because I'm accountable to God. I come before God and it's okay. Like if he tells me I need to go prove this isn't true, okay. But otherwise, it's just me prove myself. And I don't have to do that because I already serve a God who has done all the proving for me.
Yeah.
And so being able to step back and just recognize that person has their own story and didn't mean to hurt me or throw me under the bus. And I don't have to defend myself because I have a God who speaks in and through
Yes.
me. And
Yeah.
so if he wants me to share or wants me to speak up, he'll tell me. And
Yeah.
otherwise, it's okay. Like his goodness overrides these things that I feel are so big. He's enough. In the nitty gritty, it's hard. Like I was frustrated and I cried. And then I just really felt like God reminding me, no, I'm enough. And you don't have to justify yourself. You've been justified. You
Mhm.
are mine. Your character and who you are, you're mine.
That's so good.
And I just thought there's so much freedom in that. There's so
Mhm.
much freedom in knowing I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to be anything except who he's created me to be. Right.
Yeah.
I look back and I think today, well, this will be fun because you're going to bring your redemption out of that situation. And so I
Yeah.
think kind of like the perspective change is that it's a mystery and that I don't know what God's opening up in the midst of this or in the midst of the mystery, but I do know that he's good.
Mhm.
And I do know that his goodness is present. And I do know that he's enough. And so it makes it a challenge to me to like recognize, like, oh, this is faith. Faith is believing that when things are hard, that God is going to bring his goodness and his faithfulness and his redemption out of that space. There's a piece of it that builds faith, but there's also a piece of it that makes me, I don't know if admire is the right word, but makes me admire him even more. Like, wow, like you're right. This is fun. This is wild. Like, what a wild journey. I don't have to take everything on. I don't have to. I read a while back, only carry what love asks you to carry.
Mm.
And it's been
Mm.
so powerful for me because I think I'm somebody, and I think teachers in general, like I
Mhm.
want to do all the things and I want to do them correctly and I want to help all the children and do all,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's just my heart. Like I just, and I think it's beautiful because I have spent a lot of time in repentance over the last year, recognizing that I've picked up things that God hasn't asked me to carry.
Yes.
And it's so beautiful because to me, repentance has become such a gift of just realigning with God's heart and what he's asked me to do. And so I think in a situation like yesterday where I was really frustrated and I felt kind of attacked, it was a beautiful time for me to practice coming back to him and just saying like, hey, I feel these big feelings. What
Mhm.
is this touching? What am I believing about myself? What do you see?
Wow.
And what's your truth, right? And that's when it comes back to the mystery of it and the beauty of it. Like, oh, okay, that doesn't hurt like I thought it would because you spoke your truth to it, right?
It's like he's painting this history of his faithfulness to us. And it's like grows our
Yes.
faith in the process, but it is that adventure, which there's tons of mystery with that. And so trusting him in the unknowns, I say jumping off the cliff into the dark, knowing that his hands are down there below. But it's the
Yes.
same idea of like, but we receive so much breakthrough in that trust too, the trust fall really. And just knowing that he's going to prove who he is to us as we continue to go, okay, I don't have to vindicate myself. Okay. Like each step of freedom invites us into this new, the wide open space of God's goodness and glory. This
Yeah.
has been such an incredible episode. I feel like there's so much here. And I know teachers would be so blessed, Bekah, if you would be willing to pray for them around this kind of listening prayer, really, and having this constant conversation with God. Maybe, teacher, you just want to start for yourself. And some of you are like, I want to do it for me and my kids all at once, or I'm already there talking to Jesus, but like, how do I do it with kids? And would you just be willing to pray them into the beginning of something new?
Yes. Oh, Jesus, we just thank you. We thank you for these teachers. We thank you for the work you're doing in their lives. We thank you for their identity.
Yeah.
And we just come before you. And I just pray that you would begin to open up ways and spaces that only you could know and imagine, that
Mm-hmm.
you will work in their classrooms, in their own hearts, in their staff, in their schools, in their sphere of influence, that you would bring spaces that they could walk into that would speak to who you are, that you would remind them that they are conduits of your goodness, and that you would bring blessing into their lives in being able to listen to you. And I pray that you would just allow teachers to surrender elements of control,
Yeah.
that you would allow them just to remember that you have placed them in this space, that there is enough time, there's enough resources, there is enough patience, and there's enough of them because you made them. And I pray that you just help them to rest in that, that as they go through their day, they would begin to just hear you in your still voice, that you begin to work in their classrooms, and that you would help them to just listen and enjoy the mystery and the ride of what you're bringing into their lives. And we just look forward to the testimonies that you're going to bring into teachers' lives through listening and through hearing your voice. We thank you that you always speak.
In Jesus' name. Amen. Bekah,
Amen.
I just want to thank you for your transparency and sharing your own journey. It is so powerful. And I know so many people are going to just be blessed by this episode today. So thank you for your time. Teachers, I just want to encourage you. I'm going to put like the main points of Bekah's talk about like how God is enough, that you're enough, that there's enough time, like all those pieces. I think that those could even become declarations for some of us. I want to encourage you that whole piece of prayer plus identity awareness, like who God's calling you to be, it does transform your teaching, like you've heard Bekah share, your relationships in and out of school, and your perspective on life in general. And that Jesus is just inviting us when we have big emotions flare up, like Bekah said, it's an invitation to healing. And he is always about our wholeness, right? That's what his death and resurrection purchased, was us becoming whole by knowing him, the one true God. And so we're excited to invite you into this space and just take some time this week to sit with him and ask him what he has to say about all this, because I'm sure there's something personal that he has for your own heart in your space of life right now in this season. So I also encourage you to join us in the gathering place for Christian educators on Facebook to share how God is speaking to you through this episode. It's just a fun place for us to have discussion. And I would love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes that equip and encourage you as a kingdom educator on mission with Jesus, and share this with somebody who needs it, because I am sure that there are some truth bombs that our friends probably need today too. So have a beautiful week. And Bekah, thank you so much again for joining us. Thanks for tuning into this podcast. Please be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends in education so they too can be strengthened and encouraged in living their kingdom identity out loud in this pivotal hour. And please visit kingdomeducators.com to receive your Kingdom Educator Daily Truth Declarations, my encouraging newsletter, and be the first to know about my newest resources, online and in-person events. And be sure to find me on the socials at kingdom.educators. Until next time, don't forget you are a history maker, and what you do every day is transforming lives.